Hello and welcome to the Two Ball Brothers and a Microphone podcast. This is one of the Ball Brothers, Danny, and I'm here with Pete. You're also bald, right? Last time I checked, you're bald, right?
Yes,
you are. All right. You're a tall bald brother too. You've got some height on us as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You sure do. So today I wanted to get together with you and talk about something that we are doing internally at ThreeWills with regards to digital workplaces and some of the things where I always joke around and say the cobbler's children have no shoes, but I also want to make sure that we are able to utilize the technologies that are in front of us and apply some of the things that we do with our clients to us and try to take the situations where, we're a specific type of organization and Office 365 has these things to offer and sort of cater it to what we should be doing as an organization. So you and I have been working on that, which has been fun. And go ahead.
I think internally, we're having a lot of customers ask for these things. We've worked with customers on kind of modernizing things. And so it's a pretty revealing exercise to go through that internally.
Yep.
Given that we've done very similar things to customers. We migrated from 2007 to 2010 on-prem, and then 2010 to 2013 to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the same baggage that everybody else has. It's kind of a good way to go through a learning exercise and put ourselves in customers' shoes.
Yeah, and for us, we've even done things where we've migrated off of different platforms. Like at one point we were using Atlassian's Confluence, and then at one point we were using Jive's Software's product and moved off of that. And so there's been some history around all of this stuff as well. And I think for us, it's been looking at what Microsoft offerings are out there and we sat down and sort of talked through what some of the goals were of doing this. And I think one of the key things that came out of that was, there's certain technologies that we want people to be able to play around with, but don't do that on our main tenant. let's keep dev environments off of this. And I know we all want to, kick the tires. I think it's typically the site that we create that we just sort of go in and mess around with. But I think one of the things that we're recognizing as well is that we need to control this, and that comes into the governance piece of this as well, where we want to control that. I mean, this is an important asset inside of our organization. So I think you and I are recognizing that we need to put some additional controls around this.
Absolutely.
Yep. So I think that's another good thing that's coming out of this. As well. So let's talk some of the nuts and bolts of things that we're looking at doing. I know one of the things you did an inventory of all the site collections that were out there, and then you and I created a spreadsheet where we're going through and sort of doing this filtering of what are the ones that we can go ahead and clean up and get rid of, and then some of the ones that maybe I think we made this move from before there was like portals and then there was sites, and now we're using Teams pretty extensively, so we need to go through and make sure we've moved everything forward and that we're not leaving anything behind, and also that there's not sort of like two places for the marketing department or there's two places for different things. So I know we're sort of evaluating what we have internally and making sure that that we're consolidating things and putting things in the right place. So that spreadsheet was very helpful.
Yeah, that spreadsheet really came from the PMP Tools GitHub repo. One of the tools that the PMP project and SharePoint PMP team really has. I don't think they've done a great job of marketing, to be honest, but this is relatively new, and there's even a UI scanner and coming soon, some transformation capabilities as well. They've got a lot of YouTube videos, so if the community calls have gone through some of these things. But the SharePoint modernization scanner is what I ran, and that very recently, as of June 1st, got an update to actually provide some Excel outputs for group connection readiness, so kind of groupifying sites, and then page transformation readiness. So one of the things that is going to change very soon is you used to not be able to groupify an old team site collection.
Okay.
So that's actually changing. So one of the things you and I are working on after the inventory, which really tells you an incredible amount of information. Things like what can and can't be modernized, a bunch of output files as far as web scans and site scans. And it tells you really if a site's going to be ready for, groupify, whether or not you can actually do that, what blockers you might have. Does a site already have a 365 group, is publishing enabled, or, whatever the case may be. Other warnings, permission warnings. So, one of the big things with modernization and being able to use Office 365 groups and take advantage of Teams and Planner and Stream and all of those things is having a group, an Office 365 group back that particular feature.
Okay.
So if you already have a group, that's a not a stopper, but it's okay. I've already got the group. How do I wire up those other features, or can I even associate this with a group because I have really deep nested subwebs and I have broken permission inheritance all over the place.
Yeah.
So it tells you a whole lot of information just at the top level, and then you can dive into some of the additional files for web scans and tell, do I have custom master pages? Do I have alternate CSS? Some other things that might trip you up trying to modernize your site.
And when you're saying modernize, is that I'm looking at that like we're using like the new modern pages that are responsive, that look good in a mobile device, and has I guess a new set of web parts that you can use, and it's just a much cleaner interface as well.
Yeah, so modernization, modernizing, I'm trying to think of what their exact terminology is, but
Uh-huh.
it's modern sites. So modern Office 365 group connected site, whether that's a team site or a communication site.
Uh-huh.
All the functionality you get with mobile first, being able to see those pages and have them function in the SharePoint mobile app. Being able to take advantage of the new SharePoint framework solutions and the
Uh-huh.
new modern web parts,
Mm-hmm.
all of those types of things. In an old team site, for example, with the new hub sites, team sites that are based on the old team sites without a modern landing page,
Mm-hmm.
you won't see the hub site navigation. So you can actually join the hub, but you lose some of the functionality of the hub
Okay.
unless that site's modernized.
Okay. And then, so I know as part of this overall thing as well, you're talking about hub sites. Was I think we identified a couple of like key use cases. So like for us, we talked about accounts, where we're going to have a hub site for accounts, and that broaches all the way through marketing, sales to delivery, so that we're all on the same page. And we identified certain types of sites that we know that we want to have, and where they would roll up underneath the hub site. I thought that was interesting. I think we maybe had like 5 or 6 different types of sites that we knew we wanted to be a part of this.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to a larger discussion that a lot of our customers are trying to grapple with as well.
Uh huh.
So it forces you to think governance again, that word nobody likes. But if you're going to choose to modernize and make changes to support modernization, you want to do things like flatten your site collection hierarchy. So if you're in Office 365 and you've got deep subwebs,
Yeah.
and you've got a hierarchy of subwebs, you want to rethink, how are you doing that? Why are you doing that? You're not going to be able to take advantage of certain things, but that conversation should it begs the question of, well, what are my key use cases, right? So it goes back to what a governance discussion. What business value am I trying to get out of this?
Uh
And
huh.
for us, you and I had the discussion about, well, we've got some internal things with private groups or teams that are private. And then that flows nicely into kind of that corporate intranet mentality. So there's a department's use case for us. Obviously as a consulting company, we have sales. So there's that kind of sales use case, collaboration over sales documents and collateral, et cetera. And then projects, we have our internal practices of improvement over time for those particular practices. So we kind of, you and I, just to kind of be very explicit to folks listening, we discussed kind of, well, what are our key use cases? And, that cobbler shoes argument, we got to go back to square one, just like we do with our customers, and say, where do we start from a value perspective and sort of build up from there. So it means you got to do the work.
Yep.
Then you got to clean up things that are old and you don't need around, especially with GDPR. Should we keep data around? Does that data have anything in there we shouldn't be storing, et cetera? It's just a good practice to kind of take a step back and clean up over time.
I know you'd love to talk about GDPR right now, right?
No, I know. This week it's been horrible. So for those that have not dealt with it, May 25th was GDPR's effective date, and so now I'm sure everyone got all the privacy updates and agreements and email bombarded with those. Please read my privacy statement, but that means signing deals with clients and terms of how to deal with data that we deal with when we do migrations, for example. It's been very fun this week.
So out of this, I know we've been we're coming up with a list, and I've actually tomorrow in the company meeting I'll run through sort of what the high level tasks are for this. That we went through earlier this week, and so it sounds like our implementation of this is doing some of the cleanup, and it's running some. I guess we're going to be modernizing some of the sites and moving some of the content around to the appropriate place, and then I think the end goal of this is I joke around with Tommy and I said I feel like there's like we've got 10 different home pages. Like, I don't know which homepage is the homepage. But, just more of, we have one place that people go that's a, hub for the departments, but then you can branch down into seeing all the accounts and seeing a hub for the accounts, and just a lot, I guess, a cleaner environment and something that hopefully will make more sense to folks as well.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, we're doing the digital workplace workshops with customers now, and I think it goes back to what's the definition of that digital workplace, right? So if its intention is to be sort of that, and I'm doing air quotes on the radio, if it's meant to be that virtual equivalent to a physical workplace, well, in our workplace, as I mentioned, we sat down and sort of mapped out, well, what are sort of the physical or the conceptual, what's our conceptual workplace, and we had those sort of key use cases. So you kind of have to take a step back and do that, and then what are we trying to accomplish? Well, if we're trying to lay that structure out and make it easy for people to get work done, that means finding information has to be easy. Engaging with that information, collaborating with other folks. So, we're trying to find a way. We're all in on Teams at ThreeWill.
Yeah.
So, I live in Teams pretty much all day, but I still have email with customers. I still have, content that sits in SharePoint and those types of things. So how do we make it so that I can use the SharePoint mobile app or the Teams mobile app and make really good sense of how we're organizing this stuff, no matter where I am, no matter what tool I'm using. So
I think it's interesting as well that we're applying these technologies and looking at the size of an organization and how we like to collaborate. About a year ago, we decided we were going to go all in on Teams. It was about a year. It was a little more than a year ago. Teams. We just right away we took a liking to it, and there was instantly this overlap of what could go on in Teams and what could go on Yammer, and we made a decision. Hey guys, for internal use, let's just stick to Teams. And I still use Yammer every once in a while for some external collaboration, but I think it's just been good for us to take a look at who we are as an organization. And I also put this in the goals for our project, which was, we're not building out our clients' type of intranet for ThreeWill because we don't have that money. We don't have the time. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is leverage, what Microsoft has and apply it to a small organization like ThreeWill.
Yeah, I think that's really important for any organization that starts to look at, well, how do I look at it in the last 6 or 8 months. We've done a lot of migrations. We've had huge success with migrating some really large customers from on-prem to Office 365, and we're starting to see that kind of the watershed moment of, okay, I'm in the cloud, now what?
Yeah.
And so now people have to figure out, well, how do I modernize? What am I not taking advantage of? How do I get teams? So the kind of marketing behind some of these things is finally catching up with customers where they're in a position to take advantage of them. And in our situation, like you said, we kind of do have that cobbler's shoes issue all the time, but how can we get to really use the tools the way we want to work? And for our customers, it's answering the same question. It's not going to be the same for everybody. It's, that governance question is not a one size fits all question. And the answer to it definitely is not one size fits all. For us, provisioning things is pretty much a one-time activity, right? Except for projects. So our project processes are automated. But pretty much everything else isn't. Well, in a large organization, that's not going to work. You get somebody with, we just migrated someone to 365 that had, more than 5,000 site collections. Well, that's not going to work. They provision probably 20 a day. And they're also deprovisioning or archiving, roughly the equivalent over time. So they've got to look at their situation and say, how do I take advantage of these modern capabilities? But how do I also, make sure that I'm managing that environment well, as, in the same vein, how do I get rid of things at the same time, or how do I archive, or whatever the case may be?
Well, this has been fun working with you on this. I'm looking forward to, maybe we'll do a wrap up when we're get to a good version 1 of moving everything over and modernizing it. Maybe do a follow up for next quarter of what we actually did. That'd be fun to do.
Yeah, I think step 1 is some healthy deletions that folks are already aware are coming. The 29th of June. So there's about 50 or 60 site collections that are just going to disappear on the 29th of June. I think it was a Friday. So that's step 1. Step 2 will be how do we start modernizing some of these things. So that'll be interesting. See how to how can we convert those pages, the existing pages, and there's some good guidance out there from Microsoft at this point as well. So
very nice. Well, thanks for taking the time to do this, Pete. And it's been great working with you. It's sort of like I'm the business person who I have no idea how to go implement this stuff, but you just make it happen magically. All you need is a couple of PowerShell scripts, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's the easy button.
Thanks, everybody, for listening, and have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.